All right. So good morning, everybody. We are here at the Conservation District Employee Roundtable. Rad Watkins from Missoula Conservation District is going to run today's show. And it's all about hosting realtor workshops. So take it away, Rad.
Hey guys, good to see everybody. I'm gonna just it's gonna be pretty casual, and I'm gonna rely on you guys for half of it to tell me what you've been doing. But basically, the gist of today's workshop is messaging the 310 permit requirements to realtors, with the idea that realtors are sort of our first line of defense. I mean, you hear again and again, it's even in political ads, that more people are moving to Montana, and these people have different values or different life experiences, and they're bringing those with them and changing our environment. And as those of us who are sort of keepers of the 310 law and stream permitting, realtors can be a big asset to us to talk to people who are moving here and don't know about the land ethics that we're trying to share as a conservation district. So before I get into all that, I'm going to give you a little bit of background to two things that I think are important. One is, and you guys might have gotten this through context, the Missoula Conservation District is fairly strict with its 310 law implementation. When we look at what projects may impact a stream, we are really taking into consideration not just work on that stream bed, but also the riparian buffer. And I'd be happy to share with the group. I just dug into, what is an adequate buffer to protect a stream. And I found a scientific article that looked at buffers for all different reasons, from nutrient loading to wildlife corridors. And of course, wildlife corridors are not something that's part of the 310 law. But anyway, it was mentioned in this article. And the conclusion of the article said that a buffer for a riparian area should be anywhere from 30 feet to 328 feet. So although we can't say this exactly in the law, what we've been doing in Missoula is telling people that if you're going to be working around a stream, within 50 feet of a stream, probably should give us a call and see if you need a 310 permit. And so because that's the way we implement the law through our administrative codes here in Missoula County, through a Missoula Conservation District, we needed to make sure the realtors understood that. I'll give you a little bit more background about myself. I'm the director of the Missoula Conservation District. This is really my dream job. I went to college here in Missoula in the 90s. That's why I have this gray beard. It's been a while. But always loved the Northern Rockies so much. I mean, I don't really associate Montana or Idaho or whatever. I kind of think of the bioregion, and I'm more of a, no offense to you guys in Eastern Montana, I love the Rocky Mountains. So I've always been really passionate about conserving that. I remember when I got to college and I heard somebody give a talk, and they said pretty much every species that was here when Lewis and Clark walked through is still here, with the exception of the woodland caribou. I thought that was really neat. And a lot of the conservation work that I worked on and was part of, just a small part of back in the 90s, coming back to Missoula 20 plus years later, it's neat to see how those things have taken off. Whether you love them or hate them, grizzly bears and wolves are more prevalent on the landscape, and they are a species that was here when Lewis and Clark came through. When I was in college, wolves were in the 9-mile drainage near Missoula and in Glacier National Park, and that was it. And now, you could argue they're a problem. It's sort of like white-tailed deer or Canada geese. I mean, both those are conservation success stories. When you have to have hunting as a management tool, or other management tools that involve euthanizing an animal or taking of an animal, as a management tool, that's kind of a success story. And then you just have to talk about how to do that ethically and sustainably. And that's what we're shooting for with grizzly bears, right? That's what a lot of people, whether again you love them or hate them, people are looking to have a sustainable harvest that can be a family tradition of these animals, or at least some people are. Anyway, I don't want to get too off target there, but so returning to Missoula and getting to work in conservation, the only species that's not really doing better, I mean, knapweed is more under control. There's actually land conserved all around Missoula. Sure, there's a lot more subdivisions, but there's a lot more public access to hiking trails than there was 30 years ago. Knapweed's under control. So we're doing really well. And a lot of that is because of conservation districts and our other conservation partners, the state, the feds. So that's really exciting. My background here was as a biogeographer, and I went on to get a master's degree in forestry, but it really was not forestry. I don't know about insects, disease, board feet, markets, all that stuff. I was a landscape ecologist, so I'm a very big generalist, and I just kind of a conservation strategist and community organizer in our position. And that's the 310 law fits really well in there because it doesn't have really strict sideboards. I feel very I don't feel sorry for, but I sympathize. It must be hard to have Haley Graff's position and be the 310 expert in a law where you don't really have hard parameters established until there's been a court case that determines them, including when we can take jurisdiction. So real interesting thing. Before I moved here, I lived for 17 years in northern Wisconsin. I just met with someone. We're working on this horse management workshop this weekend and for the conservation district. And I went out to a horse owner yesterday who is from Minnesota. So similar neck of the woods. She actually lived a little south of where I lived. And she talked about real winters, not like these gentle Montana winters. And I always tell people that we came to Montana to give our kids a taste of urban living and get away from the cold. And they're like, where the hell did you come from? And we say, well, we were in northern Wisconsin for 17 years. And there we had snow on the ground literally for 6 months a year sometimes. And it was like living on top of a mountain. And it was gray. It was very depressing. But lots of nice natural areas and 2,500 natural lakes in the 2 counties that made up the community where I lived. So in the summer, rolling forests and beautiful, kind of if you've ever been up by Seeley Lake, sort of like that without the epic mountains, just really thick forests and lakes around and people playing around in boats. And not a lot of jobs up there. So I ended up sort of inadvertently staggering into the world of real estate. And for 8 years before I took this job at the Conservation District, I was a real estate agent. So I understand that world too, and how those guys think a little bit and, where they're coming from. And that I think gave me a good opportunity to network with that group and communicate with them, have some understanding so that they didn't instantly put their guard up when they heard a conservationist come in. And I think that's important. Some things are important for you guys to realize too when it comes to working with real estate agents. And I'm sure, everybody probably knows 10 real estate agents, right? It's pretty common career. Really interesting. I know people who've made a tremendous amount of money being a real estate agent, in a small town making more money than the president of the United States. And you don't even need a high school degree to get into that field. So it's a real interesting field that way. And things are changing. There was just a big law that affects how real estate agents disclose their commission, I guess is the best way to say that. And that's kind of a tangent too, but that's a big deal for real estate agents right now. It used to be they had a fixed commission of around 6%, but of course it couldn't be fixed, but it really was. And now there was a lawsuit that basically said, yeah, that was price fixing. And now that's really has to be up for negotiation. And I was just talking to my old broker this summer, and he was saying, if you're not careful, you could end up doing your whole transaction and not getting any commission. So you need to really make sure you disclose that properly and negotiate it properly when you're working with a buyer or seller. So just some other things about real estate agents to consider it. And I would say, in my opinion, good real estate agents are overpaid. I mean, they make, like I said, more money than the president of the United States. And often, that's not even like an LA real estate agent. This was in a small town in northern Wisconsin. I had several friends that were making crazy six figures. I myself took like a 60% price cut, and I was just kind of a average, okay real estate agent to come work for the conservation district. But on the other hand, there's 50% of real estate agents that are struggling and they're spending their own money to advertise and do all these other things. And you don't get paid to come to work. You have to work until you learn the field enough that you can start making money. So there's like half of these people who are doing really well and probably getting, very well compensated for their time, and other people who are desperate to go home and feed their families. And the reason I stress that is because it's important to remember, people don't starve to death easily. That's one reason we need to make sure people are fed is because before someone starves to death, they steal and they do other unethical behaviors. So when somebody's spending their own money and they get close to a deal, you can see their ethics fall away. And that's when a lot of real estate agents get into trouble. So the reason I mention all that is because one thing that can really upset a real estate agent, whether they're successful or they're scrapping to bring home the bacon, is if some outsider screws up their deal. So we don't want to be that person. And I get calls. I mean, I still look around at real estate all the time just for fun on realtor.com. And I see the properties that are going to be affected by the 310 law. And lo and behold, I end up getting calls on those properties a lot. And usually it's the same property over and over again. I don't know, any of you guys ever had that? Give me a thumbs up or something if you've ever had those calls. Same property. Yeah, there you go. Thank you. Yeah, you get and you're like, yeah, I know this property. Maybe you've even been out to see it. Maybe you took the listing agent out to see it and talk about what they need to know. I think it's really important that when we take calls, even if we're like, man, this is a horrible property. I can't believe it was subdivided in this way. They're going to have all sorts of trouble. Forget the 310 law. They're not going to be able to get a septic tank. It's half rock. It's going to be super expensive. We don't let our opinions get in the way of their deal. We have to be really factual. It's like being a cop or like training a horse. It's not about emotions. It's about, what are the sideboards? What are the rules? So whenever I talk to someone like that, or whenever I get one of those calls, I don't want to say, oh, don't look at that property. That's a pretty compromised property. I say, well, here's some things you should know. We have this rule. Here's the process in Missoula County for getting a 310 permit. If you're going to do work within 50 feet of the stream, you might need a 310 permit. Here's the other 310 permits that have been issued on that property in the past. Here is erosion hazard, what do we call it? The channel migration zone study, which we have for the Clark Fork and the Blackfoot the Clark Fork and the Bitterroot coming through Missoula County. You might want to be aware of this. If you did want to stabilize this bank, which you've pointed out to me or through looking at these permits, could be an issue, or has been or is different than the aerial photo you see from 5 years ago. You might notice that there's 100 feet of bank missing. Here's what it would take to get that permit through. Here's kind of the plans that we've been looking at. Missoula County does not us, but floodplain and us, we don't permit riprap very often in Missoula County. These are the more biologically engineered solutions that we're using. Here's examples. These are examples of firms that have worked on them, that kind of thing. Just stay really objective and not get into your opinions on whether it's a good lot or a bad lot, or, you know, even a good agent or bad agent. And certainly if an attorney's ever involved, you know, they'll really come down on you. And I learned that from being a county planner. You know, we had attorneys every once in a while come in and get mad at us for ruining a deal or being too opinionated in what use could go on at a property. So I think we have to be really careful of that too. Just be objective and stay to our rules. When we talk to real estate agents, I think that's a good starting place to say, hey, one thing I never want to do is ruin your deal. Understand that a real estate agent should not be an expert. I was just telling Chris before this that when I was a real estate agent, I built 2 houses. I'm a do-it-yourselfer. I'm a handyman kind of guy. I tried not to have anything to do with the home inspection. One, because I couldn't control myself. I'd say, oh, you could just do this, or, you know, that's not that big a deal. Or, so I didn't really want to know. I didn't want to read the home inspection.
Ashley Lowry or Ashley.
If my buyer came back and said, I have a question about page 10 or something, I would read page 10. But the home inspection is really an agreement between the home inspector and the buyer who's paying for it. And then, you know, we come together to figure out negotiating points. So the real estate agents don't have an obligation to be the expert of everything. They're supposed to be the source of the source. So I always encourage a real estate agent, and this is what I did when I called the county planner or other regulatory agency, let's call them on speakerphone together. I don't want to call as the real estate agent and then play a game of telephone and tell you what I heard. I want to call together and we can hear it together. And then, you know, if we have questions, let's ask them right there when we're talking to the county planner or the floodplain guy or whoever it is. So I encourage real estate agents to do that with our office. Feel free to call with your client, you know, anytime. And then again, understand how we work. We answer to boards. We don't make these decisions ourselves. I mean, when I talk to the public, I say, I don't have a crystal ball, but based on 4 years of working with this board, here's where I think they would decide on this. Here's what I think they'd want to see. But really, it's up to these boards, and you got to get 4 out of the 7 members to agree in our case. So those are some of the things that I just stress when I talk to a real estate agent, to sort of make them not be defensive about losing their deal. The other thing is, real estate agents do need to be worried about being sued if they don't disclose something. I have a really good friend who's a very ethical real estate agent, and he missed something on a 4-bedroom home that only had a 3-bedroom septic. And right now he's being sued for it. And, you know, they have errors and omissions insurance, but it doesn't look good and it's not fun and it's stressful. And so we don't want them to wind up in that position because they didn't let somebody know. Now, I'm curious, have any of you guys had the same experience I've had, where you go out to a property and they've done something that violates the 310 law, and they say, oh my gosh, I didn't know about the 310 law. Anybody ever had that experience? Yep, I got a yep from Chris. I got Amy's raising her hand. Yeah, a lot of Donna's shaking her head. They always say, I don't know, right? And I don't really blame people for that. I mean, we have conservation districts in every county in the country. You guys may know better than I, but as far as I know, only Montana has regulatory authority as a conservation district. When I worked in Wisconsin, we were more like NRCS. You know, we had money if you wanted to play with us. We had lots of technical knowledge, but we didn't have any regulatory authority. And that's just not our role. So who would think you have to check with your conservation district about some law called the 310 law to, you know, before you do X, Y, or Z to your property if it has a stream on it? Well, interestingly enough, about 5 years ago, I'm going to throw something up on the screen. Let's see here. Share screen. Can you guys see that? Natural water bodies and land preservation disclosure. Can make that bigger too.
Yep, I can see it.
Cool. Thanks, Chris. So I think it was about 5 years ago, they added this to the buy-sell contract, or the vacant land, and I guess it's just the buy contract. And we got somebody in the chat. What is that? Yep. Okay, thanks. So this actually says, it kind of quotes some of our 310 law. It's the general policy of the state of Montana that natural water bodies and lands immediately adjacent to them are protected and preserved to be available in their natural or existing state, and prohibit unauthorized projects, yada, yada, yada. So even though people say they didn't know, if they bought their property in the last 5 years, they signed a contract saying they knew. Now, this would be considered the small print. When I was a real estate agent, and I considered myself a very ethical real estate agent, and I might still have a Zillow profile up, and the few reviews I ever had, they agreed that that was my strength. I did not. I waited for people to tell me they had to write a contract, not for me to push them into a contract. But anyway, this would be what I would consider the small print. So some people are super detail oriented and they want to go through everything with the professional. Some people want to look at the blanks that the real estate agent fills in, the price, the closing date, whatever it is on the contract that's different, because all this other stuff is on every contract. You write one, you don't get your offer accepted, you write another, same except for those blanks. So they often didn't spend time on the fine print. So that's fair enough too. Plus, this is kind of ambiguous too. It doesn't really say a whole lot here. It even says property owners should consult their local soil conservation board. Well, okay, I'm going to Google local soil conservation board, and I'm not sure where I'll wind up. Maybe I'll wind up on conservation districts. I'm not sure. It's not very specific. So one thing you guys might remember last year, I think it was last year at convention, MACD approved a resolution. We as an association approved a resolution to get that language changed to be more specific. And I had been talking to our local Realtors Association, who got me in touch with the state association person, who I think actually even before our convention, they were working on rewriting the contract. And they were open to the resolution that Missoula Conservation District proposed. And let's see if I can find that. And they adopted it. I just found out, I kind of forgot about it because I emailed them a while back and they never got back to me. And then I just kind of spaced out. We suggested changing it to this language, and this was in our resolution that we proposed to MACD, and MACD took forward. So we changed it to, it's the general policy of the state of Montana under the Montana Natural Streambed and Land Preservation Act of 1975. I think it even says, I think we ended up changing it to 310 law. And then property owners should consult their local conservation district, so people knew who to reach out to. Well, I was talking to Chris beforehand. I was looking at my notes and I was like, oh yeah, I never checked to see. I just called a real estate agent and I was like, can you quickly check line 187 from that contract and tell me if the water disclosure is there? And he said, nope, it's not there anymore. He said, but I know we have it. He said, it's now line 310 on the real estate contract. So pretty freaking awesome that they put that language in. The 310 law is specifically mentioned in all real estate contracts, and it happens to be line 310 on the contract. So I'm just giddy about that change. So if you talk to any landowner who's bought land in the last, let's be safe and say 6 months, because I didn't ask when that contract went into effect. From now on, any new buyer should be very aware that there's the Montana Natural Streambed Land Preservation Act, and that they should reach out to the Conservation District. Chris is making fun of me for being so giddy over it, but I like moving things forward with conservation. So all that being said,
Hey, Rad.
Rad, yeah,
there's a question in the chat. Amy Bailey from Carbon said that she bought a house last year and it wasn't in their contract, and wanted to know if this a requirement for all of in Montana.
Do you still have your contract? I mean, when you say it wasn't in your contract, did you look at 187 or line 310? Because it's a state approved contract. Unless you work directly with an attorney and not a real estate agent. I'm not totally familiar with Montana laws because I was a Wisconsin realtor. But I think, you could either do a contract for sale by owner, and then you guys could write out your own contract, or you could use an attorney or licensed realtors, which is their title, and it's a trademark thing. They have to use the state approved contract. So line 187 had been on there, and now line 310 will be on there. So one of those disclosures was on if you bought your property, certainly in the last 5 years.
Also, Sam,
I'll have to go back and double check and look, but I remember looking for it because of issues that we've had. So I'm kind of curious.
Yeah. So
Sam also had a question. She was curious as to what the final wording is and wondered if it's a 310 law, because she always thought that would be confusing to the layperson. And she wanted to know if it's the contract that you sign at the title office when closing, or if it's a separate thing.
It's your buy-sell agreement, or so it's the contract you sign when you make an offer on a house. And I don't actually have one in front of me, and I tried to get one from the association, and they were like, well, only licensed realtors can have those contracts. So I don't actually have it. We could probably get one from the association, but the realtor that read it to me didn't send me the contract. So I apologize, I don't have it in front of me. I thought he said 310 law on it, but it certainly said Montana Natural Streambed Land Preservation Act and Conservation District. So yeah, I apologize for not having those details, Sam.
We can find out from MACD too, since they moved forward with the resolution.
Yeah, and like I said, it might have been done before the resolution ever went anywhere, because I know there was a timeline for the state renewal of the contracts. And then they redid them again because of this thing with commissions that I want to say happened last August. And that was a bit of a scramble. So disclosing who you work for and how you get paid is a new thing. So one thing we tried to do too is figure out a way to have workshops with agents. Usually when an agent called, they would say, oh man, I'd love to have you come in and talk to our brokerage. And a lot of times they'd say, I'll have my broker contact you, or you should reach out to my broker. And I don't know how many offices there are in Missoula, but I'm guessing there's 25 different real estate offices at least in Missoula. So I never did that. I went to our county organization of realtors, which here is called the Missoula Organization of Realtors, and asked if I could give a presentation to the group and sort of explain my background. And they said, why don't you, what if we offered this disclosure, education around this disclosure as a continuing education course. So realtors are required to take continuing education every 3 years or so. I don't know what it is in Montana. And they actually have to pay for so many credits, so they stay up to date on things. So it was really cool. They sent me a form, and I had to apply to be a instructor, which some of our board felt like we should be paid for, but because I'm sure other instructors are, but I was just happy to get the word out. And the realtors actually paid $60 a piece to come to this training and hear about the 310 law, which is a great way to go. And they were going to record the Zoom, but they forgot to. So they were like, oh, we have to have you come back and do this again so we can use it. And I don't care if they're paying for it or not, as long as you're getting the information. And so I have a slideshow that I can share. I'll share with Chris and she can make available. Happy to flip through it quickly if you want, but it's a lot of reading. And I just kind of went through what the law says, what the procedures are, examples of prohibited projects, what happens if you don't get a permit, the code that gives us this jurisdiction, how someone could come talk to the board, and the whole 310 process, the decision process, a little bit about the ecology of a stream and why it's important. And that it comes, right out of the Montana Constitution. So that was really a pretty successful event. And I know that other entities, like here, we've had the Clark Fork Coalition do a real estate workshop before. And I'm kind of curious if any of you guys have, I know some of you guys have done real estate workshops. And I just thought maybe we could, if there's somebody who's done one, I'd love to hear you talk about it.
Hey, Rod, I have
Anybody?
the language in the buy-sell agreement if you want me to read it. We just went through it like
Yeah.
a couple months ago.
Yes, please, Jess. That'd be awesome. Thank you.
Okay, so on line 310 is where it starts. Natural water bodies and land preservation disclosure. Buyers of property in the state of Montana should be aware that some properties contain or are adjacent to streams, rivers, wetlands, floodplains, and other water bodies. It is the general policy of the state of Montana that natural water bodies and the lands immediately adjacent to them are to be protected and preserved to be available in their natural or existing state, and to prohibit unauthorized projects related thereto. Property owners should consult their local soil conservation board, a land use professional, or other qualified advisor regarding any applicable local, state, or federal regulations, including permitting or other approvals before working in or around any stream, river, wetland, floodplain, or other water bodies, including vegetation removal.
Hey, Jess,
Yeah.
Go ahead, Brian.
hold up that baby real quick so we can see it. Thank you.
Yay. Brian knows what really makes me giddy. Congratulations, Jess. That's
Thanks.
cute little baby. You ever need a babysitter in Missoula? I just dropped
In
by.
Missoula.
So I'm curious when that's different than the language that the agent just read me. That's the old language. When did you have that? When was that contract from?
So the date on the bottom of the contract is September of 2023, but we signed it July 11th.
Interesting. Well, so they redid the contracts after that. I want to say, I'm going to Google it quickly. Sorry for not making eye contact. I want to say that big disclosure lawsuit happened in August. So that might be just since August that they have the new contracts out.
I bet not all offices have the new contracts yet. Or
Well,
maybe
and
they
this
just haven't
They
updated
should.
them yet.
This one came from a pretty big company, Angle and Volkers. I feel like that's a fairly big company that I've seen all across the US. So I feel like they should
Yeah,
be
no.
up to date.
Let's try this. Interesting. Yeah. I didn't really think about looking into this part until talking to Chris right before. So it was very much my last minute homework. But the agent that I talked to on the phone read me the new contract, but you said that was line 310, right?
Yep, that's line 310.
So that would be a change because it used to be line 187. I'm in Chat GPT. When was the last time the Montana real estate contracts were updated? Do you know, I've had pretty good success with Chat GPT answering questions about the 310 law, like policy stuff that I'm like, how does that work again? And I was pretty impressed. I always double check, but Montana real estate contracts were last updated in 2022. Nope, that's not very reliable, Chat GPT. Well, we know that's not true.
Yeah, the last updated date on this one is September 2023.
Just a quick
It
note
does
on
say,
ChatGPT.
yeah, it does say to contact your local real estate agent. So Chat GPT didn't want to mess with that legal thing. I'll find out. I'm gonna look into that again because I'd like to see it. Thank you very much for sharing that, Jess. And as I recall, when the contracts came out, like, well, one, they all use zip forms and other things like that now. So unless you have a really, arcane real estate agent, their forms are automatically sort of updated, and it's pretty hard to use older forms. You do still have those agents, or I did in northern Wisconsin, that would pull out the old files of, the 50 copies of the contract that they always carried in their briefcase. But that's not very typical. So yeah, interesting. But let's so have any of you guys worked with real estate organizations locally? And if so, what was your experience? I'm curious. Anybody have a share?
Flathead
Donna has a
CD
share.
has, in the past, Flathead CD used to host a realtor workshop, and this was long before my time, but I've seen kind of the materials that were brought to that and used in that, and it was a big focus on 310 outreach for that, but also just like best practices. Living by water, I think was like one of the topic themes, and the form and function of riparian buffers and that sort of thing. And those realtor workshops that were offered, it's probably like, I don't know, 10 or 15 years ago now that we did those formal workshops. But those were offered for realtor credit, like you were talking about. And so
Cool.
lots of like big attendance at those, which I think was good. Since I've been at the Flathead CD, it was like just prior to COVID lockdown, we did a lunch and learn at our local Association of Realtors office. And that was not offered for any credit or anything like that. No, like formal realtor credits like they get, but it was sent out on their network of realtors, and it was pretty well attended. There were like 12 people there or something like that. And it was just like an hour long sort of like brown bag. And we did a presentation with, again, big focus on 310 law, but then we also got to kind of highlight like our programs, and how we offer landowner assistance in Flathead County and all that. I did, as part of that, come across this really great resource that the realtors that attended the lunch and learn loved. And they asked, like, we brought printed copies of it. And there was a time where we had a big box full of these realtor guides for representing property with wetlands and riparian areas. It was a document. It's like a booklet that was put together by Montana Watercourse, and it's dated 2006. So like it's old, but still really relevant information. And they loved that. I just put it in the chat if any of you guys want that. But we also tabled at the Northwest Montana Association of Realtor. It was like a annual meeting or a conference that they did, and those things like flew off the table. We gave away so many of those. So I think that's something that realtors really appreciated having, and it's not necessarily like specific to 310 law, like for that entire document, but it does reference like applicable permits that they should be aware of and the agency contacts for those. So I don't know, I'd love to see more of those printed and made available to districts. I think that'd be great.
Is that what, I'm not familiar with the organization, Sam, East Montana Water Course.
Yeah. It's an
Are they still
education
around?
program.
Yeah, they should still be around.
I
I would
think
guess
so.
that it's through the university in
Okay,
Bozeman, I
yeah,
believe. And I would bet that if they haven't reprinted that yet, that they'd be interested in possibly doing a reprint on it. Um, Especially if somebody would be willing to sponsor a grant to help pay for that.
Yeah.
But
that's
we
what
can
I
sure
was
reach
just
out to
thinking,
them.
Chris. Yeah, totally. If we could get, that would be a great thing for us to be involved with as the, I don't know, I mean, even MACD, to get our logo on there too, and just be a partner, I mean, really. But yeah, that's
Yeah, it'd
awesome.
be
Thank
nice
you,
to kind of
Sam.
update it too. I don't know if there's
Right?
any like change in some of the language that we might want to include, but yeah, maybe like an education grant from DNRC or something like that. And we could get a big, like a bunch of them printed and hand them out to districts at convention or area meetings or something.
Yeah, I love that idea. That's super cool. Um, cool. Thanks, Sam. And I like the idea too of a lunch and learn. I mean, the continuing education is neat, and they'll pay a little more attention. I remember as a realtor, sometimes you're like, I'm not getting paid to listen to this person talk, and some people would be less respectful than others, and depends on the topic. But still, people who are real professionals, they want the knowledge to avoid those lawsuits and other things, and represent their people the best. Donna, you had something too. It sounded like.
Yep, we did a 310 workshop. We actually had Clint Smith, who's our FWP 310 guru. He's amazing. He went over the 310 law and everything. And then we had um, a lady come in and talk about fuels mitigation. And we had a weed district lady. Oh, and then we have the gentleman who does water rights. So it was kind of, a little well all around kind of a thing, but it was really good information for them. And I think we charged $25 and they got 2 credits. So, and that was, that helped pay for, I think we had like 25 people. And that just helped pay for the room and stuff like that. So it was good for putting it on.
Neat. So that they got continuing education credits for that.
They did, yep.
Yeah. Neat. Anybody else have anything they want to share with experience with workshops with the real estate agents?
We actually modeled ours after, it's not Gallatin, it's down Ennis. In Ennis, they had a workshop down there and they gave us the information from it. And so we kind of went off of theirs and they had great information. They had door prizes and everything. They got local, businesses involved and um,
The districts that have hosted something like this, if you want to send me any of your materials for other districts to use, I would be sure to put them up with this recording for the roundtable.
and I think I saved the emails that I got from them because I asked and they shared. So I'll send those emails that'll give you that information.
Bitter at CD put in the chat that they've done a realtor workshop or realtor workshops like Flathead did, have a partnership with the local realtors and Bitter at Water Partnership. So each new landowner receives a package with 310 law and living near water bodies. So that's pretty cool.
Super awesome, Julie. Yeah, I would like to make it. In fact, it's part of my work plan, and I only have 3 more months to sneak it in. But do something again with the real. I would like that to be an annual thing that we continually work on in our district. And I really like what Donna was saying about, well, and Sam, both, well, and Julie, making it more than just 310 potentially, you know, an introduction to the conservation district. I know that, you know, again, Missoula County, we get sort of hyper focused sometimes on our 310 stuff, and we're sort of diversifying a little bit, but you know, just introducing a conservation district and all the other programs we run and all the other services we provide would be a really great thing. I'm not sure. I mean, Fergus somehow did it as continuing education, but even just an annual meet and greet. I will say that real estate agents tend to be people, and they're a lot of fun. I love my ecologist buddies. And I think they're a pretty fun group too. But man, the real estate agents do like to have a good time. So usually if you're going to do something with agents and you're not wasting their time, it's a good time. Nice people. They are the third least trusted profession in America. I think it goes used car salesmen, attorneys, real estate agents. I remember that was always really hard for me during my time. I blinked and I was in it for 8 years, and I had a license before that, which is what kind of pulled me into it. But anyway, it was always kind of hard for me knowing that ethics are a big deal to me, and being in one of the considered least ethical positions was always really hard. Let's see. So Chris has already emailed Montana Water Course and has that rolling. Awesome. Of course you have, Chris. Anybody else have anything they want to share about past experiences with agents? Cool.
I don't have anything new to share, but I just want to say that I think Bitterroot CD's packet that they work to get to new landowners is amazing. I wish we could do something like that, and I don't know how to necessarily like put the wheels in motion to do that with our local realtors. Maybe it starts with kind of just connecting with the association of realtors and seeing if there's a way to have that kind of available to realtors that are able to give that out. But wow, what a great idea.
Yeah, that is a
I think
great idea.
the language in the buy-sell agreement is really important, and I think that was really important work that you guys did, Rad, to get that updated. But I can tell you, I bought a property with a stream on it 10 years ago, and I had never heard of that, and I certainly didn't read my buy-sell agreement. So
Yeah.
I think it really does get lost in the fine print, and it's really important to have it there for sure to make sure like there's no question that people have gotten the information, but it's not where people like digest that information, I feel like.
No, that is such a good point, Sam, because that's, I think, why it was a no-brainer for the organization to say, yeah, we'll put it in here, because now we're covered. Now we don't have to talk about this. Now the buyers are signing something saying they're fully aware. Mm-hmm. So, it kind of takes the agent's responsibility to share that information off the plate. So yeah, you're right. All these other tools are probably much more important. Along the lines of just, I'm trying to think, as a group, not recreating the wheel. We have this healthy riparian guide. I think some of you have seen it. And I know when I first started working here, I've had a couple different CDs reach out and say, hey, can we grab that and just brand it as our own? And I reached out to my predecessor, and she was like, no, because of all the photos and copywritten information, it would be really challenging to go get that release. And so I have never pursued that one. But I just did a Bear Smart rack card And that one is in Canva. I can share with you guys too. That's something that could be valuable to real estate agents, just kind of knowing. We actually have a Bear Smart ordinance in here, but I didn't get into that in the rack card. That's something I'd be happy for anybody to change and rebrand and play with. Any of these things that we could either do at the statewide level or, tools other people have that we can just share, I think are super helpful. And I really do think at the statewide level, it might be a good place to do some of these things. I mean, we had that whole DNRC guided sort of branding of conservation districts, and to follow that up with sort of step 2 of like, well, okay, now people know who we are and that agriculture's in our blood, or you can bank on us restoring streams. That's great, but here are some of the resources we provide too. Living on the banks is a good one for sure. Chris just threw that in the chat. I think somebody got an MACD grant to do that. I can't remember. I'm sorry for not crediting the CD that made that, but I have pointed people to that. That's a good resource. Anything we can do that, helps us all not recreate the wheel is really good. And then I also just wanted to mention along those lines, I'm going to share again. One sec. First, I better find it on my own. Sam shared something with me. It's in PDF. Okay. There's a conference coming up. Having trouble finding how to share it.
The green button in the middle and the bottom. Share.
Yeah, thanks. I got that. I just don't see it on my screen for some reason. I don't see my PDF reader being one of the options I can share. But let's try one more.
That's that GRI, the realtors.
Yeah,
GRI,
that
we hope you guys will represent living on the bank.
There's an opportunity to show more windows, show all windows. There it is. Okay, I had too many windows open. Yeah, so there's a trade fair coming up in Kalispell. Are you guys planning on being there, Sam? Are you tabling at this?
TBD. Donna reached out to us about it to see if we could table and provide the Living on the Bank resources. And I have a conflict on that day, and so I was gonna connect with Jessie, my coworker, and see if she was able to do it, but she just got back today from being out of the office, so we haven't had a chance to touch base about it yet. But regardless, I think it would be a really good use of our time to do that, and it's right here in Kalispell, so it would be really easy to. But yeah, I hope to.
Molly Masters with MRCD CNI. We were going to go up there, but it would be a day's drive each way for both of us. It's just not feasible. So it's like, oh, hey, wait a minute.
We're right here.
Great, yeah, yeah. And then you guys can present the, more in depth of the 310 stuff. Yeah. And we've just ordered a bunch of swag that would go up to you to hand out. So
they love swag.
Yes.
Realtors love swag.
I said I gotta keep a cozy for myself though.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It's like maybe worthwhile to consider, like, where's the line? Like, what's the most important information to get to realtors? And then once that sale closes, then it's like, what's the information we target to landowners? Because it changes, I think. I mean, the content is the same, but like how we would consider getting that information out there, like to realtors is different because they're trying to get that information straight in their mind and, make sure that those sales go through. And then that's where their interest in it probably stops,
Yeah. That's usually when it ends. Yeah. On to the next sale. That's a really good point too.
I just think
Have
there's
any of
like
you?
info we should kind of like put up front about like, you know, for the realtors, it's like, okay, if you're representing property with water on it, like here's the things to know, but also to emphasize, like 310 permits are free. And
Mhm.
we try to make it like a partnership as we go through the application review process, not like a red tape burdensome process. So they can relay that information and then also not intimidate people away from a sale, you know, so it's like packaging that information in a certain way that puts the most critical and like incentivizing information up front.
Such a good point.
We have
Yeah, the
some
value added
messaging.
process.
We have some messaging that like we use when we advertise the 310, like in the paper that's like, you know, basically like, do you live by water? Get your 310 permit today. It's free, it's the law. So that's like a little bit incentivizing, like it's free, but also it's the law. So you better do it, you know, like intimidation factor. And I don't know if that's the best messaging necessarily to get to realtors, but maybe the free aspect of it and the education aspect of it would be beneficial.
I think it's a pretty good message to get to realtors. I mean, it's free, it's the law. Yeah, it's a value added process. It's quick. Because sometimes people put, an offer contingent on a conditional use permit being issued or something like that, but that can slow down a deal. I mean, conditional use permit can take 6 months or whatever the county's policy is, but at 310, I mean, man, we turn them around in 2 to 6 weeks if they're complete, 6 weeks at the longest if all the ducks are in a row.
Wow.
And then 2 weeks if at the shortest, if you happen to just make the site inspection deadline on the last day, and we'll be out the next week to do the site inspection. You'll be at the hearing the week after that. And then we usually waive the 15-day waiting period. So it's not a very cumbersome law that way.
Ours is cumbersome.
I'm sorry, go ahead. Yours is cumbersome?
Ours is cumbersome.
Well, you guys deal with a lot more too. And actually, I'm looking this separate topic, but rewriting the administrative code, that might be a good roundtable for us, because our administrative code is pretty generic, but the way we implement the 310 law is pretty specific. And I think that belongs in the code if we're going to be, as close as you can. And that would be a good one to have Caitlin on to say, like, how much can you add in your administrative code that's not really in the state law? I don't know. Chris jumped in. Here comes some words of wisdom.
I think the problem with that is that it's sort of like federal law down to state law. The federal law is general, the state law is specific. So in this case, the administrative rules are a little more general, and every conservation district makes their own rules on how it works in their district. And so, yeah, there's probably things that you could fine tune in the law, but there's also the other side of that, where if you open up that 310 law, you better be ready for a lot of people to want to make a lot of substantive changes that we might not want to have made. So that's something.
And I guess I was talking about at the district level.
Oh, okay.
Like if you look at flat, so like I would like to get some of our specifications into our district level administrative code that aren't really there.
Into your rules, your district.
Yeah, in rules. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah, and that might be an interesting discussion for us all to have, just the process there. Like I wanted to have us say, if you are doing work within 50 feet of a stream, you needed to get a permit. And I got pushback from our friends at DNRC saying you can't say that because the law doesn't say that. And every case has to be assessed on its own merit. And my pushback there was then, well, isn't the application where you review things on their own merit? You can always determine it's not a project and it doesn't need a permit, but the application is the way to review that. And if we don't have anything to tell the public, do you get one when you're working within 10 feet of a creek or 75 feet of a creek? And does it depend on the size of the creek or the intensity of the use? It's really tricky. So I thought that that would be nice for the public, not trying to be over regulatory. And then I thought it was interesting in that most recent legal opinion about the utility boring, basically did say we could put into our rules a distance. So I'm still kind of trying to digest that one and understand why we could say if it's past here, you don't need a permit, but we can't say if it's closer than here, you do need a permit. So I would love to have that discussion with all of us, but I guess I've used up all our time. Thank you, Chris, for having me talk about this. And I learned more than I shared. So thank
Well,
you guys.
Thank you for doing it, Radley. I guess if people have follow-up questions, get them to Rad and I'll get the video posted at some point and let you guys know.